So diversity for me is simply about difference. So we often talk about diversity based on core characteristics, things like race, gender, disability, sexual orientation, etc. And of course, it covers all of those factors. But actually, strategically, it's important that corporates really expand their level of thinking when it comes to diversity. So we've got to start thinking about things like personality, whether somebody's an introvert or whether they're an extrovert, social background, thinking style, and really broaden our field of vision in terms of what diversity is. Strategically, though, it's important to understand that actually, if we want to get some rewards from this, having high levels of difference in a corporate structure won't give us any benefits unless we make a strategic connection to organizational inclusivity. So inclusion is the extent to which you value, respect, look after, promote, but more importantly, leverage the talents of the diverse pool that you have. And unless we are really doing the leveraging bit, we're not going to get rewards. So the key message here is, let's make sure that we are making a strategic connection between high levels of difference and high levels of inclusivity. And then the key third element to that is this notion of equity. If we want to have high levels of difference in our organizations, we have to recognize that life outside is unequal, it is structurally unfair. So if we want to increase our levels of diversity inclusion, we have to address those structural barriers in order to attract and retain that diverse talent. So that's what we really mean by diversity, equity, and inclusion. And then broadly in terms of the why question, well, why do we want to do it? I think the first thing to say is it's just the right thing to do. It's not fair that life is structurally unfair. So we at Fairer Consulting are on a mission to create a fairer world. I think secondly, we also know that the world is constantly changing. It's full of, turbulence and disruption and the rest of it. So to be innovative and creative, we have to avoid something which is groupthink, which we get from too much similarity. So diversity gives us a reduction in groupthink, but it gives us the innovation and creativity that we need. But the critical message here is it's diversity plus inclusion that gives us that innovation and creativity. And one of the things that I often get from senior leaders these days is a bit of a pushback actually in some of the kind of mythology around diversity and inclusion and actually what are we trying to do? And one of the big questions I often get is what's the difference between equity and equality? And actually, Dan, shouldn't we just treat everybody the same? And I think that's a big misconception about the end game here, because we know that if we treat everyone the same, we're not going to end up with equal outcomes in terms of what we're trying to do. So in order to have inclusive and equitable workplaces, because we're all different, we obviously have to treat people differently. Now, that's not to give people unfair advantage, but what we're trying to do is level up that playing field. And then we fall into this really interesting question and these debates around positive action and positive discrimination. So a misconception is if you are female, if you're black, if you're gay, if you're disabled, etc., we're going to start hiring those populations just because they fall into those categories. And that's completely a misconception in terms of what corporates are doing. Actually, what corporates are trying to do is to eliminate the discrimination that those groups face in order to provide fair opportunities in terms of hiring, work allocation, promotion, etc. So let's avoid the debates around positive discrimination, positive action, and focus on the end game by recognizing that discrimination is there and that's what we're trying to eliminate.